The blade pressed cold against Aiyana's throat, and she could smell the whiskey on Cutter Briggs' breath as he leaned close. "You try to run again, Apache girl, and I'll carve you up pretty." His fingers tangled in her long black hair, jerking her head back. The wedding ring he'd forced onto her finger caught the firelight, a golden shackle that burned against her skin like a brand. She didn't flinch, wouldn't give him the satisfaction, but inside, her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird, and she thought of her grandmother's words. Sometimes the only victory is in choosing how you lose. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and blood through the open window of the shack Cutter called home. Aiyana pressed her back against the rough wooden wall, listening to his boots stumble across the floor. He'd been drinking since dawn, celebrating what he called their wedding, though the preacher had been just as drunk in the ceremony, nothing more than slurred words and threats. Her wrists were raw from the rope he'd used to drag her here from the trading post where he'd bought her from a crooked Indian agent. The same agent who'd told her people she was dead, who'd pocketed the money meant for her family's winter supplies. The same man who'd laughed when Cutter counted out silver coins like she was a horse. But Cutter didn't know about the knife hidden in her moccasin. Didn't know she'd been watching, waiting, learning the rhythm of his drunken rage. He thought Apache women were like white women, helpless, broken things that bent under a man's will. He was about to discover otherwise. 3 days earlier, Aiyana had been free. Free and starving, but free nonetheless. She'd been traveling alone since her band was forced onto the reservation, carrying what remained of her grandmother's medicine bundle and her father's war lance wrapped in tattered blankets. The Apache way of life was dying, choked by barbed wire and broken treaties, but she refused to surrender to the reservation agents who herded her people like cattle. Better to die free in the desert than live as a prisoner on government land. The trading post at Bitter Creek had seemed like sanctuary when she'd stumbled in, hollow-eyed from 3 days without food. The owner, Samuel Morrison, had fed her and asked no questions, but his kindness made her careless. She'd fallen asleep in his back room, exhausted and finally warm, and woke to find Agent Wheeler standing over her with his greasy smile and wandering hands. Well, well, a genuine Apache princess, all alone and unclaimed. Morrison had protested, but Wheeler wore a federal badge and carried federal authority. "This one's government property now, Sam, but I might be willing to work out a private arrangement." That arrangement involved Cutter Briggs, outlaw, killer, and the kind of man who thought owning another human being was just business. Wheeler had sold her for $300 and a promise to leave his supply wagons alone. Cutter had paid without haggling, already planning what he'd do with his new wife. The mockery of a wedding ceremony had taken place in Wheeler's office, with a bottle-drunk preacher mumbling words over a Bible stained with tobacco juice. Aiyana understood enough English to know she was being handed from one devil to another, but her Apache remained silent on her tongue. She'd seen something flicker in Cutter's eyes during the ceremony, a moment when he looked at her working hands and his face softened, like he was remembering someone else. But it passed quickly, replaced by the hard satisfaction of a man reclaiming something he thought the world owed him. Wheeler had mentioned that Apache raiders killed Cutter's family 5 years back, left him the sole survivor of a burned-out homestead. Now he collected Apache lives like a twisted form of justice, convincing himself he was balancing the scales. Let them think her just another broken Indian. Let them underestimate what fire still burned in her heart. Now, in the stifling darkness of Cutter's shack, that fire blazed. He'd passed out in his chair, the empty whiskey bottle rolling across the floor. His breathing rattled deep in his chest, and the knife at his belt glinted in the dying firelight. Aiyana moved like shadow, like the ghost her grandmother claimed she could become when danger called. Her fingers found the hidden blade in her moccasin, a thin piece of steel she'd ground sharp on rocks during her journey. Not much of a weapon, but enough. She could end this now,
cut his throat while he slept, and take his horse, ride hard for the border before anyone found the body. But killing him would make her hunted, and the desert was already full of men who wanted Apache blood. She needed to be smart, not just angry. Instead, she cut the rope around her ankles and gathered what supplies she could find: jerky, hardtack, a waterskin. His horse was tied outside, a mean-tempered stallion that matched its owner's nature. She approached slowly, whispering Apache words her father had taught her, the old language that spoke to animal spirits. The horse, its ears pricked forward, interested, not aggressive. "You want freedom too," she murmured, running gentle fingers along its neck. "We understand each other." She was leading the horse away from the shack when Cutter's voice split the night behind her. "Where you going, wife?"
Aiyana's blood turned to ice, but her hand stayed steady on the horse's reins. She didn't turn around, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. "Getting water for your horse," she said in careful English, keeping her voice flat. "Animal needs to drink." His laugh was ugly, full of malice and whiskey. "At 3 a.m, you take me for a fool Apache girl." She heard his boots on the hard-packed earth, unsteady but determined. The horse sensed the tension and stepped sideways, nostrils flaring. In her peripheral vision, she caught the gleam of his gun barrel in the moonlight. "Turn around, slow." She obeyed, but her fingers worked at the rope, holding her father's wrapped war lance to the saddle. If she was going to die tonight, she wouldn't die unarmed. Cutter stood swaying in the doorway, his shirt hanging open and his face flush with drink and rage. "Thought you could steal my horse, my property?" He spat in the dirt. "You know what you cost me? More than money, my reputation. Word's already spread that Cutter Briggs can't keep his own women in line." His voice dropped to something more dangerous. "I built my name on being the man who takes what he wants and keeps it. Can't have every Apache thinking they can make a fool of me." "I am not property." The words came out before she could stop them, sharp and clear in the desert air. His face darkened. "Oh, you speak English just fine when you're riled up, don't you? Been playing dumb this whole time." He stepped closer, and she smelled the stale sweat and cruelty on him. "Makes this even better. You'll understand every word when I explain what happens to wives who try to run." The rifle shot cracked across the desert like thunder. Cutter spun around, dust kicking up inches from his feet. A voice carried through the darkness. Calm, controlled, and absolutely deadly. "That's far enough, Briggs." A man emerged from the shadows beyond the corral, rifle trained steady on Cutter's chest. Tall and lean, with dark hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of hard years under an unforgiving sun. His clothes were worn but clean, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man who knew how to handle himself in a fight. "Joshua Garrett." Cutter's voice held equal parts recognition and hatred. "Shoulda known you'd stick your nose where it don't belong. Woman looks like she wants to leave. Seems reasonable to let her go." "She's my wife, legal and proper." "Legal?" Joshua's laugh was dry as desert wind. "Wheeler's drunk preacher don't make nothing legal, just makes it profitable." "I got papers, Garrett. Federal agent witnessed it proper. She was starving, dying in the desert. I gave her food, shelter, protection, more than her own people could manage." His tone turned bitter. "The least she could do is show some gratitude." Aiyana watched this exchange with growing amazement. This stranger, this white man, was risking his life to defend her. It made no sense. White men took what they wanted from Apache women. They didn't protect them. Cutter's hand twitched toward his gun. "This ain't your fight, Garrett. That Apache girl owes me a debt." "It is now." Joshua's voice carried no emotion, but something in his tone made Cutter's hand freeze. "You got two choices. Walk back in that shack and sleep off the whiskey, or find out how fast I can work this rifle."
You can't watch her forever. She's got nowhere to go. No people left who'll take her. Cutter's voice held a cruel satisfaction. I'm patient, Garrett. I can wait. And when you slip up, when you get tired of playing hero, I'll be there. Apache girl knows where she belongs. That's her choice to make. The silence stretched taut like a bowstring. Aiyana could hear her own heartbeat, could smell the sage and creosote on the night wind. Finally, Cutter backed toward the shack, his face twisted with frustrated rage. This ain't over, Garrett. That Apache whore belongs to me. The rifle cracked again, and splinters of wood exploded from the doorframe inches from Cutter's head. Next one won't be a warning. Cutter vanished into the darkness of the shack, and Aiyana heard him cursing in words that would have made her grandmother reach for a switch. Joshua kept the rifle trained on the doorway for long moments, then slowly lowered it. "You hurt?" he asked, not looking at her directly. She shook her head, then realized he might not see the gesture in the darkness. "No. Why did you help me?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice held old pain, carefully controlled. "I had a sister once. Nobody helped her when she needed it most."
The rancher's place was 3 miles south, hidden in a canyon where a spring fed cottonwoods and wild grass. Aiyana rode behind him on his horse, a sturdy mare with gentle eyes, while he led Cutter's stallion by a rope. They'd taken the animal as payment, he'd said, for services rendered. "You can't keep me," she told him as they rode, testing his intentions. "Wasn't planning to? Then why bring me with you?" "Desert's full of men like Briggs. Figured you might want a place to rest up, plan your next move." His words were spare, offering no more than necessary, but there was something in his tone, a respect she hadn't heard from a white man's voice in longer than she could remember. He spoke to her like she was a person, not property to be bargained over. The canyon opened before them like a hidden world, adobe buildings nestled among the cottonwoods, with corrals and gardens that spoke of careful tending. Lantern light glowed warm in the windows, and she could smell bread baking, coffee brewing, the everyday sense of a real home. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Mostly. Got a couple of hands who come and go, but they're off trailing cattle to Tucson right now." She followed him to the main house, every instinct telling her to be ready to run, but exhaustion weighed her down like stones, and the thought of a safe place to sleep, truly safe, made her legs weak. The interior was simple but comfortable. A stone fireplace, handmade furniture, shelves lined with more books than she'd ever seen in one place. It felt like a home, not just a shelter. "There's a room in back," he said, lighting an oil lamp. "Door's got a good lock if it'll make you feel easier." "You would lock me in?" She stared at him. "No, I'd give you the key." For the first time in days, something tight in her chest loosened. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it.
3 weeks passed like a cautious dance. Aiyana kept to herself during the daylight hours, helping with small tasks around the ranch, but always staying within sight of an escape route. She mended harnesses with hands that remembered her grandmother's teachings, tended the vegetable garden with knowledge passed down through generations of Apache women, and watched Joshua work with his horses. He was different from any white man she'd known, patient with the animals, speaking to them in low, gentle tones that reminded her of her father with his war ponies. He never raised his voice, never used force when kindness would serve, and he never once tried to touch her or corner her when she was alone. The respect was so foreign, it made her suspicious. "Why do you do this?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch, sharing coffee and watching the sunset paint the canyon walls red and gold. "Do what?" "Treat me like," she searched for the English words, "like I am a person, not a thing to be owned." Joshua was quiet for a long moment, his coffee cup cradled in work-roughened hands. "My sister was taken by Comancheros when she was 15, sold to a man who treated her like property." His voice was steady, but she heard the old grief underneath. Took me 2 years to find her by then." He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. Aiyana understood the weight of those unspoken words, the way they settled between them like stones in still water. "She died?" she asked softly. "In a way." He took a sip of coffee, staring out at the darkening sky. "The woman I brought home wasn't my sister anymore. The light in her eyes was gone. She lasted 6 months before she walked into the river one winter morning." Aiyana felt something shift inside her chest, recognition, understanding, a shared knowledge of loss that needed no translation. "I am sorry." "Wasn't your fault." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw her own pain reflected in his eyes. "But I swore I'd never let it happen again if I had the power to stop it." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like the pause between lightning and thunder, full of electricity, but not dangerous. For the first time since her capture, Aiyana felt something other than wariness or anger. She felt seen. "My grandmother used to say that some people carry the spirits of protectors, that they cannot help but stand between the wolf and the sheep, even when the sheep are not their own people. Smart woman, your grandmother. She would have liked you." The admission surprised her with its truth. Joshua smiled then, the first real smile he'd seen from him. It transformed his weathered face, making him look younger, less burdened. "Would have been honored to meet her."
The trouble came on a Tuesday morning, riding hard from the direction of Bitter Creek. Aiyana was hanging laundry on the line when she heard the horses. 4 riders, moving fast and angry. She recognized the lead rider's silhouette immediately, Cutter Briggs, and he'd brought friends. "Garrett," Cutter's voice carried across the canyon like a curse. "Send out my wife or we'll come in and take her." "No wife here, Briggs. Just free people making their own choices. That Apache whore belongs to me. Paid good money for her." "Money can't buy a person." Joshua's voice carried no anger, just quiet certainty. "Not legally, not morally, not in any way that matters." Cutter's companions spread out, trying to flank the house. Aiyana recognized one of them, Tom Bradley, a known killer with a price on his head. Another was Wheeler's deputy, a mean-faced man who'd been present during her sale. The fourth was a younger man who kept glancing nervously at Cutter, like he wasn't sure he wanted to be there. "You've been asking around about me, Garrett," Cutter called out, his voice carrying a dangerous calm that was worse than his earlier rage. "Heard you've been telling folks I ain't got no legal claim. That hurts a man's reputation, makes people think they can take what's his and get away with it. Last chance, Garrett. Send her out or we'll burn you out. And don't think I don't know every trail in and out of this canyon. I've been watching, planning. You're trapped." Aiyana made her decision. She walked out from behind the laundry line, her father's war lance in her hands. She'd unwrapped it that morning, feeling the need for the strength it represented. "I am here," she called out in clear English, "but I am not your wife. I never was." Cutter's face twisted with something beyond rage. Genuine pain mixed with fury. "You ungrateful—" He caught himself, straightened. "I saved you from dying in the desert, gave you food, shelter, a home. This is how you repay kindness?" "Kindness?" Aiyana's voice rang with contempt. "You bought me like cattle. I gave you more than your own people could." The words came out raw, revealing something deeper. "Apache took everything from me. Family, home, future. Least one Apache could do is show some gratitude for mercy." "No." The word came out strong, carrying the weight of her ancestors, the spirit of women who died before they'd be broken. "I choose my own path." Joshua stepped up beside her, his rifle ready. "And I choose to stand with her." The canyon erupted in gunfire. Cutter's men came at him from 3 sides, but Joshua had the advantage of knowing his own land. He'd prepared for this possibility, creating cover and concealment around the house. He moved with practiced efficiency, laying down covering fire while Aiyana retreated to better position. But there were 4 of them, and only 2 of them, and ammunition didn't last forever. Worse, Cutter had been telling the truth about knowing the canyon. He'd positioned his men with tactical precision, cutting off the obvious escape routes. This wasn't the desperate charge of a drunk outlaw. This was planned, calculated revenge. "The back canyon," Joshua called to her during a lull in the shooting. "There's a trail through the rocks. You can get to the horses." "What about you?" "I'll hold 'em here. Give you time to get away." She stared at him across the space between them, this man who'd risked everything to protect her, who was now willing to die for her freedom. The tight feeling in her chest broke open like a flower blooming, sudden and overwhelming. "No," she said, "we go together or we don't go at all." Something changed in Joshua's eyes then, surprise, gratitude, and something deeper that made her heart race. Together then. They moved as one, covering each other with gunfire and desperate courage. But even as they fought their way toward the horses, Aiyana could hear Cutter's voice behind them, no longer enraged but coldly determined. "Run all you want, Garrett. I know every water hole from here to Mexico, every town, every trail. You can't hide forever." Behind them, Cutter's curses followed like smoke on the wind.
They didn't stop riding until the sun was high overhead, their horses lathered with sweat, and their own hearts still hammering from the chase. When they finally rested beside a hidden spring in the mountains, Aiyana turned to Joshua with questions burning on her tongue. "Your ranch, your home, you left it all for me." "Home's not a place," he said, checking his rifle and scanning the horizon. "It's who you're with when the shooting starts." The simplicity of it, the truth of it, hit her like a physical blow. She thought of her grandmother's words about protector spirits, about the way some souls recognized each other across all boundaries of blood and culture. "Where will we go?" she asked. "Wherever you want." He looked at her with those steady, honest eyes. "I hear Colorado's got good country for starting over, or California, if you prefer ocean to mountains." "And you would come with me? Leave everything you know?" "Already did." His smile was gentle. "Sure. Question is, do you want the company?" Aiyana felt the last of her walls crumble. This man had seen her at her most broken and still chose to stand beside her, had given up his home, his safety, his entire life to honor her choice to be free. "Yes," she whispered, and then stronger, "Yes!" He reached for her hand then, careful and questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, when she laced her fingers through his, the rightness of it settled in her bones like coming home after a long journey. "Joshua," she said, tasting his name on her tongue like a prayer. "Aiyana." He said it correctly, with the proper Apache pronunciation, and she realized he'd been practicing, learning to honor even her name. "My grandmother always said that sometimes the spirits bring two people together across impossible distances, through impossible circumstances, because their souls are two halves of the same whole." She looked into his eyes, seeing her own future reflected there. "I think she would say we were meant to find each other." "Maybe we were." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. They rode west that afternoon, toward the setting sun and whatever new life waited beyond the horizon. Behind them, the desert held their past, both its pain and its blessings. Ahead lay uncertainty, but they would face it together. And for the first time since her world had been shattered, Aiyana felt the deep, abiding peace that comes with being truly seen, truly valued, truly free. The Apache woman had found her safety with the lone rancher, but more than that, she had found her home.